The story begins with a boy named Makoto Misumi, who is known for his terrible luck, especially when it comes to being summoned to another world. Instead of being blessed by a goddess and embarking on adventures with cute girls, his experience is less than ideal, as he lacks the typical protagonist's good looks. One ordinary day, Makoto goes to school and relaxes upon returning home. However, he is suddenly summoned by the moon god Tsukiyomi. Makoto instantly recognizes him from an old Japanese legend, and Tsukiyomi informs him that he needs to sign a contract and travel to another world, just like his parents. It's revealed that Makoto's parents were originally from another world and were transferred to Japan for their safety. While making a deal with a goddess, they promise to one day offer their most precious possession. Makoto realizes the god is referring to him, and that he must fulfill the contract, or one of his sisters will be taken. Thus, he agrees to go. After signing the contract, Tsukiyomi grants Makoto all the power he can to aid him in the other world, and even promises to delete his browser history. Makoto is sent to the new world with a warning that the goddess he's to meet is problematic. Makoto appears before the goddess, but she is instantly disgusted by his appearance. She ridicules him, calling him too ugly to be the hero for her world. She claims to have already found a more suitable hero and decides to abandon Makoto at the edge of the world with other low-ranked creatures. However, she must grant him some power, so she bestows upon him the ability to understand every language except human. The goddess sends Makoto into the abyss, where he again encounters Tsukiyomi. Tsukiyomi informs him that since he's no longer needed as a hero, he's free to do as he pleases. However, Tsukiyomi adds that since Makoto had a harsh life in his previous world, he will possess more power in this one. Following this revelation, Tsukiyomi disappears, hoping to meet Makoto again someday. Makoto continues to fall from the sky, finally landing in a lifeless wasteland. He walks for 3 days but finds nothing, which makes him feel lonely and depressed. Suddenly, he hears a distant girl's voice calling for help. He rushes towards the sound and finds a pig-like creature. The girl is being attacked by a 2-headed monster, so he decides to save her. Makoto dashes at full speed and leaps onto the creature with immense power, surprisingly beheading it. Makoto is shocked to witness his own strength. The girl is terrified by the sight and tries to escape, but Makoto stops her and introduces himself. She is shocked that a human can understand her language, and Makoto is even more astonished that he's talking to a pig. However, he tries to convince her he's a nice guy. The girl introduces herself as Emma and mentions she was heading to the Divine Mountain to offer herself as a sacrifice to a deity named Shin. Her village has been shrouded in fog for a long time, ruining their crops. However, whenever they offer someone to Shin, the fog lifts. Before going through with the offering, Emma takes Makoto back to her house to thank him for saving her. While having dinner with her brothers, Makoto realizes magic is a basic skill in this world and asks Emma to teach him. Emma begins by teaching him some fire magic, which is supposed to be tricky, but Makoto learns it in one go, surprising everyone. They suspect Makoto is at a high level, but when they check, he's only level 1. Emma continues to teach him. The next day, Makoto sets out to see if he can do something so Emma won't sacrifice herself to Shin. Since he was in the school's archery club, Makoto transforms fire into a bow and arrow. He shoots the arrow towards the mountain's entrance, surprisingly destroying the gate and injuring several men. It's revealed these men were using Shin's name to scare the orcs. Since Makoto attacked Shin's home, it triggers the creature to appear. A red fog covers everything, and a huge dragon emerges, attacking Makoto. He dodges all the dragon's attacks, even though the mist blocks his vision. Makoto uses a new skill that allows him to sense the dragon, enabling him to dodge everything before launching his counterattack. He surrounds the dragon with fireballs and blasts it repeatedly, shocking the creature and making it wonder how he possesses so much power. Makoto punches the dragon, knocking it down. However, when Makoto lowers his guard, the dragon attacks, using its magical eyes to trap him in an illusion. We see Makoto at the archery club talking to his junior, Nikumi, whom he has a crush on. She confesses her love and asks him out on a date, but Makoto doesn't believe her, thinking he's not good-looking enough. He realizes it's just an illusion and uses his power to dispel it. He understands the power Tsukiyomi granted him, which allows him to manipulate his surroundings at will. He used it earlier to sense Shin through the fog, and now strengthens his fists with it to break through the illusion. He prepares to confront the dragon, but she no longer sees him as an enemy. She is impressed by his immense power and his memories from the other world. She tells him she has seen his memories and wants to learn more about his world, so she offers him a contract to become his companion, which would benefit them both. Makoto is hesitant at first but agrees. The dragon begins the ritual and strange magic surrounds them. The dragon tries to form a balanced contract, but Makoto's power overwhelms her, so he ends up becoming her master, and she is transformed into a human. After a contract is formed, the weaker being takes the form of the stronger one, which is why she became human. However, her appearance isn't the only thing that changed, as she shows Makoto the demiplane she controls. It can be accessed through mist gates she can open. As they enter the plane, they find a lush and fertile field, which Shin is shocked to see. The plane used to be a dark and empty abyss, but Makoto's influence must have changed it, even containing fruits he recognizes from Earth. To confirm the scale of this place, Makoto uses his new Kai ability to scan the demiplane, realizing it's absolutely enormous. However, the scan gets cut off at the end of the wall. If the demiplane is a place where Shin has complete control, Makoto thinks it probably means the goddess can't interfere with his life there, so he considers building his city within it. As he thinks about settlements, Makoto remembers that the reason he came to the mountain in the first place was to deal with Shin taking orcs as sacrifices. In reality, she had nothing to do with it, as it was all a misunderstanding. Makoto wants to head back to explain things. As they exit, they run into Emma, who came to convince him not to fight Shin. She is shocked when she learns the girl standing behind him is the Great Dragon. A party is held in celebration of Makoto's victory, which revealed the truth behind the sacrifices, and Emma thanks him from the bottom of her heart for saving their village. The village elder wants to repay him in some way, so Shin makes a suggestion that the orcs move into her demiplane. By the next day, all the orcs have packed their belongings, ready to move. Makoto is hesitant to have them change their residence overnight, but the orcs are determined to repay him for the kindness he has shown them by swearing their undying loyalty to him, and Shin has already ensured the plane is completely safe to live in. In the event something dangerous were to happen, Shin reveals a mini version of herself who will be there to take care of them. So Makoto agrees to let them move in, and construction on the new town begins. While the orcs are busy with that, Makoto spends his time practicing his magic, while Shin has her fill of his memories of historical dramas. However, he starts getting annoyed by her constantly digging through his memories. Shin admits it's inconvenient for him to have to sit still while she watches his memories, so she says she will figure out a way to build a television to play them instead. While she's gone, Makoto sees some of the memories Shin left open and starts to miss his family. Since his parents were apparently originally from this world, he thinks he might be able to find some information about their life in this world. Meanwhile, in a nearby forest, a dwarf is running for his life, chased by a giant spider monster. Makoto walks around the demiplane and runs into some of the orcs, who seem to be having trouble with a huge tree they want to cut down to build Makoto a house befitting the lord of the land. However, it's too hard for them to cut through with their axes. Makoto is happy to lend a hand and uses his Kai to strengthen himself, allowing him to cut through the tree and lift it with ease. He's also able to heal wounds without expending any mana, so he's greatly appreciative to Tsukiyomi for granting him such a powerful skill. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he can heal his own wounds, but he thinks it won't be an issue as long as he doesn't get hurt. Moments later, Shin returns to the demiplane with the dwarf, having found him wounded in the forest. She ran into an old enemy of hers while out. After smelling the blood from Makoto's injured hand, it breaks its way into the demiplane to attack. However, Shin decides to stay out of it and let Makoto handle it instead. It's a spider monster plagued with the curse of unending hunger, so it will eat literally anything it can get its legs on. Since it's a spider, Makoto starts his attack with the fire element to sever one of its legs, but its regeneration is powerful enough that it recovers almost instantly and continues attacking. Makoto was able to damage it, but if it keeps healing itself, he thinks the fight will never end. He continues launching fire spears but ends up getting caught off guard and stabbed through the gut by the spider's leg, but it just makes him angrier. He unleashes his full power and begins firing repeated fire blasts with no delay, following it up with an insanely destructive water arrow. After his display of power, he passes out from exhaustion, but the spider is still able to regenerate and grabs him once more. However, it seems to have taken a liking to him after he gave her such a fulfilling battle. Shin suggests that she become one of Makoto's servants as well by forming a contract with him. So by the time Makoto wakes up, there's another girl by his side. Makoto wonders who she is, so she explains that she's the spider he just fought with. She now assumes a human form because of the contract established with Makoto while he was unconscious. Makoto is shocked by this, as he didn't think it was possible to form a contract without the consent of both parties. Shin walks in, and Makoto immediately confronts her about forming a contract for him without his consent, but she replies that it was better than a giant spider following him the entire time. The dwarf, saved, introduces himself as Bayon. He thanks Makoto for driving away the spider that has terrorized his village for such a long time, and also requests that he and his people permanently live in Shin's demoplane. Makoto almost immediately agrees to this, but Shin steps in and states that Bayon and his people can move in, but in return, they would have to satisfy a few conditions, like providing them with weapons and also acknowledging Makoto as the lord of the land. Bayon isn't sure, but she gives him 2 of her dragon scales to help convince his people. The next day, Makoto walks around trying to trace his parents' path and find human settlements. Shin then appears and informs him that there is a serious matter that requires his immediate attention. He's back at the hut, where Shin states that she and the Spider Girl need new names because the citizens of the demoplane didn't know what to call them. Makoto gets upset because he was called back for something so trivial, but Shin and the Spider Girl still insist on new names. So Makoto gives Shin the name Tomo, which was the name of the strongest female samurai, and the Spider Girl is given the name Mio. The next day, a gathering of all citizens of the demoplane has been arranged, and Makoto is surprised at all the new species that have populated the area. Tomo and Mio introduce themselves with their new names and also mention that Makoto should be addressed as either their master or lord. Makoto thinks it's ridiculous, but Tomo and Mio insist, so he ends up settling on being called the young master. Bayon introduces Makoto to his village chief named Eld, but he mentions how Makoto's looks are far from that of a typical human. He then asks him if he was given a mission by the goddess, but Makoto is offended by this question and states that he would never accept a mission from her, especially after she roasted him and dropped him at the edge of the world. Eld is relieved to hear this because the opinions of his people often differ from that of the goddess. Tomo steps in and introduces a species known as the mist lizards, who are her loyal followers, equipped with both air and water attributes. Mi then introduces her own loyal followers to Makoto, known as the Alis, whose long-term hunger has now been satisfied since they received some of Makoto's blood and mana. Makoto gives a brief speech to the citizens and immediately heads out in search of the village he had spotted earlier. He walks for a while and observes a human girl, but she is immediately frightened and runs away the moment she sees him. He continues towards the village, wondering why she ran away, and he is greeted by a horde of villagers who all point their weapons at him. The people of the village speak in a language which Makoto doesn't understand, and they start to attack him, so he is driven away. He then realizes that he couldn't understand the language because the goddess gave him the ability to speak every language besides human. Makoto goes back to the hut, upset that he couldn't understand the other humans. He reasons that people wouldn't just go around attacking others just because they can't communicate, so he assumes that he was attacked because he's ugly. But Tomo tells him it's actually because of the large amount of mana he exudes, mentioning that they would have seen him as several demon kings. Emma mentions that an easy fix for this is for Makoto to suppress his mana by imagining a lid on it. So he tries doing this, but there is only a slight decrease in mana. Makoto refuses to give up, so he vows to learn the common speech and also figure out how to suppress his mana. A magic expert named Rugo brings him a ring that can suppress his mana, but when he puts it on, it's immediately overloaded and destroyed. Makoto practices his common speech with Mio, but doesn't seem to be getting the hang of it. But he realizes that he can use his magic to write out a translation of whatever he thinks into common speech. Rugo arrives with a new magic ring, and it successfully absorbs Makoto's mana this time. But Rugo warns him that the ring changes colors from white to red when it reaches its capacity. Makoto returns to the village in a carriage, while also dressed in a cloak and mask, with the alias of being a wealthy merchant's son. He is able to get through. He notices that everyone in the village is good-looking, which upsets him since he's the only ugly person. They arrive at the Adventurers Guild, where they are greeted by the receptionist, but she finds Makoto's appearance suspicious. So Mio and Tomo state that he's being forced to wear that mask and also can't speak because of a curse. The receptionist explains that each adventurer starts at rank E and they can rank up by completing quests. Mio and Tomo are given measuring scrolls to determine their level, and everyone is shocked to see that Tomo is level 1320 while Mio is level 1500. But Tomo is upset that Mio is higher level than her, and she demands that they be re-evaluated. Meanwhile, Makoto's level is evaluated, and he's embarrassed to see that he's still at level 1. They ask for a room for the night, so the innkeeper tells them it will cost 6 gold coins. They find the price absurd, so after a little intimidation from Tomo, the receptionist agrees to only charge them 2 gold. Later that night, Makoto and Mio take a walk through the village when they suddenly bump into a girl who appears to be in distress. Makoto thinks it's suspicious that she's alone at such a late hour, so he tells Mio to handle it. But Mio suddenly scolds her, telling her to get out of their way. Makoto smacks her and reprimands her for being so harsh, and he asks the girl what she's doing all alone. The girl bursts into tears and embraces Makoto, while mentioning that she needs help. So Makoto decides to take her back to the inn, but we see a man watching them. The girl introduces herself as Ren and mentions how her sister, Toa, has been missing for over a month. Meanwhile, Tomo encounters some men who are about to raid their carriage, so she starts fighting them. She finds their attack slow and blows one away, even though she's trying to hold back. She attacks with her sword, but it's way too sharp, and she accidentally cuts both of them in half. The remaining man tries to run, but Tomo dashes in front of him and knocks him out. She brings him back to the inn, and Makoto gets angry at her for slaughtering the man. He removes the bandit's chest piece and finds that it's actually a woman yelling at Tomo for not checking. Ren walks in on their conversation and sees Makoto speaking, but it just sounds like gibberish to her, and Makoto is shocked to learn this. He tells Ren to get some food and head to bed, and she thanks him for all his kindness, even calling him her brother. She shows them a sketch of her sister Toa, but the picture seems to surprise Makoto. Ren wishes him good night, but we see her feeling conflicted. Outside, Makoto examines the memories of the woman Tomo captured, and finds that she's one of the thieves from the Adventurers Guild and somehow has a connection with Ren. He also mentions that Toa is being held by these thieves, so he tells Tomo and Mio to rescue her. Mio thinks there's no rush, but Makoto has a serious look, so they both leave immediately. And we learn that it's because Toa looks just like his junior from his old world. Mio and Tomo talk about how Makoto's attitude changed right after seeing the picture. Mio wonders if he knows Ren's sister, but Tomo doesn't think it's possible since he doesn't know anyone else in this world, mentioning how she's seen his memories. Mio gets jealous hearing this, wanting to know more about Makoto, but Tomo tells her to get to know him herself. Mia gets scared thinking about his looks, so they think they better save the girl as soon as possible. Makoto and Ren head to the trading exchange, and Makoto tells her not to worry because he sent Tomo and Mio to rescue her sister. In a flashback, we learn that they fell into debt while trying to become adventurers, but her sister failed to pay it off, telling Ren to run away. But she also ends up getting caught. We see Toa as she loses hope, but Tomo and Mio appear and Mio heals her with her magic. They prepare to head back and find the door locked, but Mio dissolves it with her magic. They are about to leave, but a man named Meli stops them, and Toa recognizes him as Zetsu's strongest adventurer. Meanwhile, Makoto is amazed that he sold his demiplane fruit for 500 gold, and Ren starts wondering about his identity. They return to the inn, but Ren notices a man and runs off. So Makoto uses his investigative Kai and sees her meeting with the adventurers. She reports how Makoto sold some strange fruit for 500 gold, and the leader tells her to steal it, saying it would be enough to pay off their debt. She doesn't want to do it, but thinks of her sister and ends up agreeing. Meanwhile, Melis wonders how Toa is able to move, and we learn he's the boss of the group. Tomo is recognized as having recorded a level over 1,000, but the men think it's too high, so they must have faked their level. But Melis invites them to join his group, saying he can make them rich. Tomo and Mio both decline, so Melis roasts them for following Makoto, since he's only level 1. This pisses them both off, so they swing at him, but he blocks it with his barrier, and Tomo recognizes it as the Clogus, so she thinks they have no chance of winning. Meanwhile, Ren thinks about what she should do, because she doesn't want to steal from Makoto. The receptionist tells her to move along, but Makoto appears and mentions she's his friend. The man remembers their previous encounter, so he instantly apologizes. Ren cries hearing that he sees her as a friend, and Makoto is determined to protect her. Melis sends his men to attack, but Tomo smashes through the barrier and blows them away. She continues to beat up the men, even throwing them through the walls of the other cells. Mio beats Melis to vent her frustration, and they end up destroying the whole building. Toa wonders if she's dreaming, but Melis sneaks up on her and holds her hostage, but he just ends up getting sent flying. Tomo wonders if they overdid it, but Mio thinks they deserved it for insulting their master. However, they start arguing over who did more work, so Tomo decides to show off her swordsmanship, slashing through the town. Mio refuses to lose, so she also shows off, and they both continue to cause destruction in the town. They return to the inn, and the sisters are finally reunited. They meet Makoto, and Toa thanks them for saving her. While Makoto realizes she's identical to Nikumi besides her hair color, the girls are exhausted and fall asleep, and Tomo thinks it all turned out well, but Makoto asks for some of Mio's silk, and he suddenly ties them both up. He thanks them for saving Toa but points out all the damage they caused, so he launches them away to let them reflect on their actions. After the chaos of destroying the village, the group flees towards the nearby town of S, joined by the other adventurers who were also captured by Melis. While traveling, they stop at a guild, informing the receptionist that Zetsu was destroyed by monsters, but luckily all the residents escaped, and we learn that Tomo used her abilities to erase everyone's memories except for Toa and Ren. The receptionist asks them if the monsters are still there, but they mention that Mio and Tomo took care of it, since their level is over 1,000. But she doesn't believe them because no one has such a high level, and we learn that since Suzuya was destroyed before news of their registration could spread, they need to register again. Makoto thinks that the jealousy between Tomo and Mio might cause further trouble and lead to destruction in S, so he shares the story of a samurai who went along on a journey to gain strength. This story convinces Tomo that she must also do the same to improve her level, so she asks for his permission to go train in the wilderness. After Tomo leaves, Mio hopes to have all of her master's attention, but Toa's presence poses a threat. As the group continues its journey to S, Makoto senses the presence of killer bees using his kai. He tells Mio to handle it, so she uses her wind blade to slice them up, which impresses everyone. Makoto tells them to keep moving, but Toa insists on extracting rare items from the monsters. Makoto struggles to look her in the eye, but when she starts cutting up the bodies, he feels disgusted and loses interest. They continue fighting monsters along the way, and Makoto names his group the Kella Trading Company. As they continue traveling, they encounter rare monsters called the Ruby Eyes. Makoto tells Mio to deal with it, but the adventurers ask her not to damage the valuable parts of the bees, so she gets frustrated and tells Makoto to do it himself. With no other choice, Makoto takes up his bow and arrow and targets the weak spot of the Ruby Eyes, taking them all out in an instant. The group admires his remarkable skills, but their attention quickly shifts to collecting the loot, and they manage to collect 12 ruby eyes before reaching S. When they visit the Adventurers Guild, Toa thanks Makoto since she leveled up during their journey, but he feels sad since he's still at level 1 despite killing so many beasts. He comes across an S-rank quest where a training company is looking for the ruby eyes, and since the group had already collected them, he thinks it's easy money and accepts the job. They divide the loot from their hunt, where Makoto only keeps the ruby eyes and a few of the other valuable materials, leaving the rest for the others. They all bid each other farewell, but he suggests celebrating before they part ways. They also share their contacts through their license cards, which also have the function of making calls and accessing information. At the dinner, the group bonds and learns more about each other. The adventurers introduce themselves. There's Louisa the Gunner, Hazel the Alchemy Meister, and Na the Priest Knight. Na then challenges Makoto to an arm wrestling match, but she's no match for him, and he easily defeats her. Toa warns him about the quest because there are various rumors of bad things happening to those that work with the Rembrandt Trading Company. This makes him cautious, and he secretly inspects the ruby eyes before taking them to his room. Since Mio is sharing the room with him, she hopes they'll get intimate, and to increase her odds, she even considers destroying one of the beds, but he has no interest and goes straight to sleep. The next day, Makoto can now create gates, and everyone returns to the demoplane, where he meets Tomo's clone and reunites with Emma, who acts as his secretary. She informs him that every species in the demoplane is settling in and performing their duties, also mentioning that they're constructing a giant castle for him, just like the one from his memories. We learn that Tomo hasn't made any contact with the group since she left for her training. As Makoto wonders how she's going, the dwarf chief rushes to take him to their workshop. He proudly presents several sets of armor they crafted, but he refuses to wear them since he's an archer and not a knight who needs armor. The dwarves are heartbroken and start crying, but he notices a coat that suits his style and learns it was also created by Rugo. Rugo tells him it will also absorb his mana, saying it will probably kill him instantly. But Makoto puts it on anyway, and he's completely fine. Rugo explains that the coat can change colors, switching between defense and mobility, but it soon fails to absorb all of Makoto's mana and gets torn. Makoto asks if he can make it more durable, and Rugo promises to make one that will be able to kill him instantly, so Makoto worries about his motivation. On the other hand, the Alki have transformed into humans using magic, and they primarily focus on collecting ingredients, since they can even consume the most poisonous items without any side effects. The following day, Makoto takes the ruby eyes and heads to the Rembrandt Trading Company, where he's warmly welcomed by the company's president, Patrick, and his butler, Morris. Meanwhile, an adventurer named Lime visits the guild to learn the identity of the one who took the job of finding ruby eyes, so the receptionist tells him about Makoto. Makoto tells Patrick that due to a curse, he can't speak, so he communicates using his bubbles. He then introduces himself as a level 1 E-class adventurer, but the mere mention of this disappoints Patrick, thinking Makoto is just another overconfident rookie dreaming of success. But Makoto pulls out the ruby eyes, and this shocks him. He quickly confirms their authenticity and asks for forgiveness for his rudeness. Makoto asks him why he needs these eyes, so he reveals that he needs them to create a magical medicine called ambrosia to cure his wife and daughters, who were afflicted with a level A curse. Makoto sympathizes with him and tells him he knows an alchemy meister who can help them create the medicine. But Patrick mentions that they still need more rubies to create the antidote. But Makoto cuts him off and gives him all the ruby eyes that he has, and Patrick and his servants are overwhelmed with joy. Patrick officially gives him the job receipt and wishes him luck with his registration exam at the Merchant Guild. But hearing this shocks him because he was unaware of any test. Makoto soon reaches the Merchant Guild, where the receptionist tells him about the written exam, and if he passes it, he will then need to complete the practical material gathering test, adding that if he fails, he will need to wait 6 months before he can apply again. To prepare for the written test, he buys an expensive book to study, but upon looking at the contents, he immediately regrets his decision. The receptionist thinks he must find it challenging, saying the test is almost impossible to pass, but Makoto instantly asks to take the test, since it's just grade school math. He breezes through the written test in just 5 minutes, and the examiner is shocked to see his near-perfect score, while Makoto wonders about the state of education in this world. In the next part of the exam, the examiner instructs him to randomly choose the item he must obtain. As he makes the selection, the examiner boasts that the items that he needs to find are super rare, and he must bring something that's of equal or greater value within the next 3 days to pass the exam. But Makoto thinks that the items he collected with the adventurers are rare, so he takes them out as a substitute, shocking the examiner. On the other hand, Tomo proves her strength as she defeats a massive crab monster and shares a feast with her companions. However, Ademium brings a message from Emma that Mio has entered the memory vault, so she gets jealous and rushes back. As she returns, Tomo asks if Mio has gone through Makoto's memories, but Emma assures her that she's only translating them. Tomo asks if anything happened between her and Makoto while she was away, but Mio just changes the topic. Later at a restaurant, Makoto struggles to order anything due to the language barrier. He unexpectedly orders what appears to be a lemonade, but when it's served, it's not what he expected, and he longs for a real meal. We see Lime spying on him, and the people discuss the defeat of the killer bees and giant crab monster. After his unpleasant experience trying new food, Makoto returns to the demoplane to enjoy his fruits, but he learns from Tomo's clone that production has decreased due to erratic weather patterns. Makoto talks about his dream of creating an illusory city, explaining that it would be a city that people would only find if they got lost in the mist. The people would be given rare foods and items, which would increase their reputation and value in the outside world. But he suddenly receives a telepathic call alerting him that Mio is in danger. He asks a human ally about this situation, who informs him that while translating memories, Mio came across something she wanted to watch, but Tomo is stopping her. Makoto intervenes and asks Tomo what's going on. We learn that Mio saw Makoto's memories of an anime and instantly became a fan, so they are fighting about whether anime or historical dramas are better. After their pleading, Makoto allows them to continue watching, but tells them not to fight over it again. At night, Makoto plans to rest in his room, but when he notices that there are only 2 beds for the 3 of them, he asks the 2 to give him one of the beds, but they tell him to pick one of them to share the bed with. He refuses to choose, so he ends up sleeping in a chair instead. The next morning, Makoto discusses creating a medicine with Hazel, but as they prepare to head out, Lime watches them from a distance, telling his friends to launch an all-out attack on them. Makoto and Hazel visit the Rembrandt Trading Company, but it makes Hazel uneasy because the company is well known in the city, and he fears upsetting them. Morris takes them to the lab, where Hazel starts reading the recipe and is surprised by how easy it is to make. But he's told that extracting fluid from ruby eyes is the only difficult part. He starts gathering magic, but Makoto gets irritated by how much the goddess is being mentioned in his incantation. He also finds Hazel's method inefficient, so he secretly interferes and helps him out. Hazel asks Morris if they're using a replacement method, and he says it's because the ambrosia flower in the original recipe is rare, so they're using the ruby eyes instead because the bees feed on the flower. But this gives Makoto the idea of making the flowers his company's specialty if he can get his hands on them. Hazel soon creates a bottle of the ambrosia, which Morris takes to Patrick, and while he's gone, they make 2 more potions. But when he comes back and slams the door, it causes Hazel to drop the potion he's holding, but Makoto manages to catch it before it hits the ground. Morris takes them to Patrick, who's injured because he tried to feed the ambrosia to his wife but got attacked by her, and it took several guards to stop her. He says that this spasm was nothing like before, but Hazel thinks it wasn't a spasm, and something was added to the curse to stop her from taking the medicine, which is possible with level 8 and above curses. Patrick talks about his wife, saying how she only had a mild fever, but she never recovered and eventually lost her sanity. He starts crying because he thought the curse would end today, and Makoto asks to be taken to her room. He mentions that he'll restrain her to make sure she takes the medicine, but Patrick thinks it'll be impossible for him since he's so low level. But Hazel assures him that he'll be all right since Makoto is the one who killed the ruby eyes, and Morris also shows confidence in his abilities. Makoto uses the scent of the ambrosia to draw her out, and then uses the judo Mo's sister taught him to hold her in place while Patrick makes her drink the medicine, and starts crying when she is cured. They also feed the cure to both the girls, and he thanks Makoto and the goddess, but Makoto isn't happy he's thanking the goddess. Makoto leaves Hazel behind to refine the potion, and he finds Mio and Tomo waiting for him outside, but they are suddenly attacked by a group, and he dodges their attacks, but they take them head-on because they want to check their opponent's strength. Their attacks have no effect, and Lime tells Tomo and Mio to join them. Tomo rejects his offer, but Mio wonders how much he's willing to pay. Lime offers her 10 gold, so she decides not to participate in the fight, which makes Tomo angry at her for betraying them. But she's just pretending to be on their side because Makoto doesn't want them to repeat the same mistake as they made in Zetsu. Makoto asks Tomo to take care of them, and she easily defeats them. Lime begs them to show mercy, and she spares him because she sees something in his memories. He apologizes for putting a sleeping curse on Patrick's family, which surprises Makoto because the curse was a fatal one. Makoto asks him why he did this, and he says that a few months ago, he met a man who told him that the adventurers marked by the Rembrandt Company had difficulty finding work. The man suggested putting a sleeping curse on Patrick's family so he would rethink his ways, and Lime says that the man assured him the curse wouldn't harm anyone. Tomo reads his mind to see if he's telling the truth, and she sees he isn't lying, so they decide to let him go. But before he can leave, Mia takes all his gold since she stayed out of the fight. A few days later, Lime apologizes to Patrick, who accepts his apology but tells him that he'll restrict what he can do as an adventurer. But Lime says he no longer wants to be an adventurer. We see him watching the orphanage where he grew up. When Tomo arrives and gives him a sword, which Makoto sent for him since he broke his old blade, he tells her that it was only because he heard someone from the orphanage died due to the Rembrandt Company that he fell into the man's scheme and placed the curse. She asks him to become her spy, and in return, she'll protect him and the orphanage, so he accepts her offer. Tomo then spies on Patrick talking with Morris about how it would be bad for them if Makoto opened his own company, which makes her suspicious of them. They return to the demoplane, and Emma tells them there's a problem regarding the three of them. She tells them that the warriors in the demoplane have started to lose confidence in their training because they keep getting defeated by the three of them. Mia thinks that they shouldn't fight them for a while, but Tomo is against this idea since it'll make everyone think that they've been abandoned. Makoto wants to check up on everyone, so he tells Tomo to meet with the lizard men and asks Mio to go with him to check on the Alis. They go with Emma and overhear the orcs talking about their upcoming training and how it's depressing to fight Makoto since Tomo and Mio let themselves get hit, but they can't even get close to Makoto. On their way, they meet Tomo, who tells them that the lizard men's situation is similar to the orcs. Makoto notes that the different races aren't exchanging information with each other, and Emma mentions that everyone prefers to keep their combat techniques hidden from the other races, but he thinks that it'll be interesting to see them trying each other's styles. So they gather all the lizard men and orcs and tell them they're doing a special training to see how powerful they are. Both sides send their most powerful warrior, and the match begins. The fighters destroy the ring, which impresses Makoto, but he keeps a straight face because it's what Tomo asked him to do. The match ends with the orcs' victory, but Tomo isn't impressed and calls them both weaklings. She asks one of the orcs why they're weak, and he says that even though they seem weak to her, the match was incredible for them, but she says that they've yet to reach the level of strength that is expected of them. Makoto asks her not to go too hard on them, but she ignores him and says that they're expected to be strong enough so they can be relied upon. Since they can't measure their strength correctly by fighting the three of them, they will gather every week to fight against each other. Their strength will be measured, and they'll be given a ranking, saying it also applies to the dwarves and Alis. Everyone is concerned that their fighting techniques will be exposed, but Tomo says that since they're so weak, they shouldn't worry about this. They'll prove their strength by winning in these matches, and the ones at the top of the ranking will be known as great warriors, and those who fail to show any results should find other work because there are more ways to contribute than just being a warrior. Tomo Claudius invites Makoto to say a few words, but he's too nervous, so he just agrees with Tomo, saying they don't have anything worth concealing, but he knows they can get stronger, so they should help each other improve. While he's thinking about what to name this new ranking system, Tomo tells everyone to get ready for the dimension ranking, but Makoto isn't sure about the name. Upon retesting their levels, Mio is at level 1500, while Tomo is now at level 1340, which Makoto thinks is impressive since she increased her level by 20, while he is still stuck at 1. But Tomo isn't happy because she expected a better result from her training. The receptionist mentions that the guild is short-handed because most of their top members have left or are injured, so he's requested to train other adventurers, and Makoto says he knows a group of adventurers that can help. Makoto asks Tomo to train Toa and the others, so she thinks about looking for a place to train the guild, but she remembers how Makoto reacted when he saw Toa, making her think that she must resemble someone from his previous life. She doesn't want anything to affect her time with him, so she thinks she needs to quickly make them strong enough and independent of Makoto. The training starts, and the group goes to fight a swarm of shadow tails, but Tomo has to step in and save them, after which she yells at them for their poor strategy. She decides to teach them basic tactics, so she tells Hazel to make a trap using water and earth magic, and tells Luisa to find a place with a clear view. She tells Hazel to add poison to the mud, and then lets them continue the fight. The monkeys step into the trap and can't move, giving Luisa a clear target to aim at, and the ones who survive are defeated by Nina, who hits them head-on, and Toa, who uses her thief skills to conceal herself and attack from behind. She tells Hazel that by using this strategy, he can use offensive magic freely because he doesn't have to heal anyone except Nina, so they defeat all of their enemies following her strategy. After their successful mission, she tells them they'll fight another nest on their own because even if their level isn't high, they should continue challenging their limits and prove they're the best. Tomo returns to the guild and informs the receptionist that she's assigned the job of defeating the shadow tail nests to Toa and her team. The receptionist is shocked because she doubts they're strong enough for the task, but she's surprised when the group shows up with the tails of 2 monkey lords, proving that they cleared 2 nests. On the other hand, Makoto tells Mio to go to the Tinak forest and find the ambrosia flower because he wants it to become their signature product. He goes to see Patrick and requests to rent one of their stores, but Patrick wonders why he doesn't want to buy his own shop. We see Makoto learn from the Merchant Guild's receptionist that if someone buys their own shop, the government will ask them to spy for them if they're in the Iron Kingdom. Patrick tells him there's a neutral city that isn't tied to any country, and he thinks it would be perfect for him to start his store. He even knows someone in that city, so he asks Makoto to wait until he can contact him. Meanwhile, Mio reaches the Tinak forest, but she doesn't like it because there seems to be nothing tasty there. A human party also enters the forest, and they are watched by two elves who don't seem happy about them trespassing. The party is soon defeated, and one of the elves named Aqua tells her partner Aris that their enemies are alive, but she wouldn't have hesitated to kill them if they had laid their hands on the Crimson Lotus. A party is held to celebrate Makoto's new company, and he thanks everyone. He's a little shy, so he asks Tomo to speak with everyone since it's her specialty, but she tells him that everyone wants to hear his voice. Tomo's clone brings him a drink, and he pats her head, which makes Tomo happy because they're connected. Mio gets jealous and brings out a dish which she had discovered inside. She thinks she should feed it him, but he eats it himself, making her sad. Tomo takes Mio away from Makoto because she wants everyone to spend time with him. The Alakina approaches him and mentions that she can now maintain her human form for a longer time. She also gives him a report of their journey to the Tinak forest and reveals the location of the ambrosia flower. She wanted to bring him a sample, but couldn't because the forest is ruled by another race. Makoto wonders if all the Alis have gotten used to living in the demiplane, and she tells him that they've adjusted well, all thanks to him. The lizard man Linny also appears before Makoto to thank him because he learned new techniques in their joint training. He reveals that he's even getting trained in unarmed combat by Tomo, but this worries Makoto because he doesn't want everyone to become like her. Bayon wonders if he likes staying inside, and he says that it's a good place to live, but sometimes Mia and Tomo cause problems. He wonders if Bayon and the others are becoming bored since they never leave the demiplane, but Bayon considers the place a paradise and says they don't need anything else. He's happy to craft weapons for everyone, but is also interested in the weapons of the outside world. So Makoto allows him to work in their new shop at S. Later on, an orc tells him that he's the new guide for the adventurers in Mirage City, a fake town created to trade goods that exist only in the demiplane with the outside world. Makoto thanks him for his services, and he's glad to be useful. The whole crowd starts shouting, and they all want to talk with him. Mio complains to Tomo that she wanted to be the one to give the report about the ambrosia flower and the people guarding it, but Tomo tells her they should wait until they're sure. Suddenly, they stop sensing Makoto's presence, which makes them worried. His presence returns, and quickly they rush to his location, where they find him practicing archery. Mio hugs him while crying, and he wonders what happened. Tomo wonders how he practices his archery, and he tells her that he focuses on the target by emptying his mind. So she realizes that he's making his consciousness vanish and reappear to shoot his targets. Mio notes that a person can only do this if they're dead, so when he was practicing, it felt like he died. Makoto assures them he's fine and they don't need to worry, but Tomo tells him that his mana capacity is increasing. She notes that a person's mana is normally fixed and can't be increased, but by experiencing death and rebirth, his mana has increased and is now comparable to that of the goddess. The demiplane has also expanded, and if the goddess finds out about this, she won't be happy, so they must suppress his mana. The next day, Makoto buys supplies for his store, but he's mentally exhausted since he can't practice archery, and because Mio keeps making moves on him. He's lost in thoughts when a bag belonging to a demium comes flying towards him. He returns it to its owner and sees the demi-human's face, which makes him realize that he looks similar to them. A girl starts hitting on Makoto, making him notice he's in a red light district, but before things go too far, he's taken away by Tomo and Mio. They get angry at him and wonder if they aren't good enough for him. He considers them his family but is embarrassed to say this, and instead tells them that they have nothing to do with what he was doing. This makes them furious, and they tear apart his clothes, but before they can do anything, he runs away by creating a mist gate. Emma sees Makoto hanging on a tree, and from the pink mist and spiderwebs, she understands the situation. She tells him that his protective gear is ready, so he goes to Rugo. He tries his new gear and is pleased with it, but suddenly Mio arrives and apologizes for the previous night. He says it's all right, but tells her not to do it again. He asks her about the race guarding the ambrosia flowers, and she tells him to leave that to her, but he gets scared of what she'll do and decides to go with her. They soon reach the Tenak forest, and because they sense someone following them, they decide to get out of their sight. They find the ambrosia flowers, and Makoto feels someone must be taking care of them because of how great they look. He gets a flashback where we see him holding his sister's hand, so he asks Mio to hold his hand since the ground is slippery. She gets happy by this, but they're interrupted by Aqua and Aris, which makes Mio mad. The humans also arrive and get ready to steal the flowers, making the forest guardians think they're all thieves. Aris attacks using ice magic, and the human girl asks Makoto why he isn't fighting back, as he realizes she's the same girl from the night before. Makoto easily deflects Aris's attack, so she attacks with her flaming arrows, but he blocks them with his defensive kai. He thinks he can get the situation under control, but notices Mio getting angrier, preparing to kill everyone. Tomo telepathically communicates with Makoto, and he asks for her help, but she refuses because he went along with Mio and also held her hand. So to make her help him, he allows her to make a katana and cultivate rice. She tells him to distract the adventurers so she can open a mist gate and transfer them to the Mirage City, and to calm Mio, he should feed her favorite food. Makoto pushes the adventurers into the mist gate and then gives his blood to Mio, bringing her back to normal. She uses her dark magic to absorb the mana of the elves and stop their attacks. Makoto tells them to tie them up in case they attack again, and he explains that he didn't come to steal the flowers, saying he just wants to talk. So they take them to their village, while Makoto realizes that a familiar magic barrier has been set up around the village to hide its presence. They're greeted by the elders and their representative Neil, who calls himself a forest ogre, surprising Mio because she thought they were elves. Neil's son Adano arrives to greet Makoto and mentions that they aren't different from elves, even if they change their names. The elders say that elves need the forest to survive, whereas the forest ogres protect the forest. But Adano wonders how long they plan to live in hiding, because the dragon's barrier is constantly getting weaker. Makoto mentions he's just a merchant looking for medicinal ingredients, but Adano is suspicious of how strong he is, so the elders continue to question him. Afterwards, Aqua and Aris apologize to Makoto and ask him to meet their master Mundo, who arrives by breaking the wall. He shakes Makoto's hand, but seeing him hold his hand for longer than she ever could, Mio gets angry and sends him flying. Makoto tells Mio he wants her to spy on Adano and Mundo, which excites her because she has seen spies in his memories. After gathering the information, she reports to Makoto that Mundo is possessed by something, whereas Adano is in contact with the demons, so he tells her to go back to the demoplane and swap with Tomo because there's something he wants to confirm with her. The elves throw a feast for him, but he sees Mundo and Adano arguing. Suddenly, a skeleton monster appears from Mundo's body and kills Adano, so Makoto confronts him. He notes that he just sucked the life force out of Mundo's body and that he's still alive, but he had to kill Adano because of his connections with a particular woman. Based on his gaming knowledge, Makoto knows that the monster is a lick. The monster tries to attack him, but thanks to Makoto's resistance against status effects, it doesn't work on him. He then uses Mio's dark magic to absorb the lick's mana, completely overwhelming him. Tomo arrives and transfers the lick through a gate, so Makoto can talk to him later. His victory surprises everyone, and they question if he's really a merchant, revealing they had planned to kill him after the feast, which makes him horrified. Tomo talks to Neil, but he fails to recognize her, so she reminds him that he was the one who asked her to set up the mist barrier around their village. She intimidates him, and he suddenly realizes who she is, so he quickly tells everyone about her, but she tells them to instead bow before Makoto since he's her master. They return to interrogate the lick, and Makoto asks him why he was in the village. He says that he wanted to observe the forest ogres and their abilities, but Tomo asks him why he became an undead. He reveals he wants to become a Grant, a species superior to humans in every way, and asks Makoto how he defeated him. So Makoto explains that he used dark magic to consume his mana when he was casting his spell. The lick thinks he's lying because it would require a ridiculous amount of mana, and this angers Mio and Tomo, who threaten to kill him, but Makoto calms them down. He wonders if the lick has any spell books he can buy, and the lick thinks he's messing with him, but Makoto mentions how he only learned magic from a single page written by Emma. Tomo suggests keeping the lick around to help him learn magic, and she mentions how he must want to become a Grant because he knows of other worlds that aren't created by the goddess, and he must believe Grants can travel between worlds. Makoto wonders if he can return to his old world, but Tomo thinks it's impossible because many have tried to travel between worlds, and only a few have succeeded. She reveals that Grants aren't the ones with the power to travel between worlds, but rather those who have successfully moved worlds. Makoto wonders if there's a way to do it, but according to Tomo, even if the goddess herself opened up a path, the survival rate is less than 10%. She proposes that Makoto form a contract with the Lick since he wants to learn magic from him, and they both agree. Makoto is too strong, so he needs to lower his mana in order to form the contract. The ritual is completed, and the Lick returns to his human form, thanking Makoto for the opportunity to be his servant, and he's given the name Shiki. Tomo tells him he has a lot to learn, but there's suddenly an explosion, and Tomo collapses, apologizing for her mistake. Makoto tells me to stop Tomo's bleeding, and he takes Shiki towards the explosion site. Shiki tries to follow him but falls to the ground because he isn't familiar with his new body. He decides to save his mana and instead treat the wounded from there, which surprises Makoto, as he wasn't expecting him to have healing magic. Makoto runs toward the explosion site and comes across a few injured people. One of them is an Ali named Hokuto, but he finds this odd because Ali should be able to heal quickly, and seeing him in this state reminds him of when his cat died in his past life. Shiki starts healing them using his magic, but some of them are too badly hurt, so he asks Makoto for help. But Makoto can't use healing magic and instead uses Kai, which isn't enough, so he combines 2 Kai spells and successfully heals him. He's confused while he senses his mana covering the area, and a girl hands him a necklace which he remembers belonging to the orc from the party. Makoto reaches the explosion site and finds traces of a missed gate, and he wonders if it's due to the explosion. He notices more gates and senses Tomo's clone as well as the orc and adventurers from the other side of the gate. The gates start closing, and he remembers what Mio told him about a person's consciousness disappearing when they die. There's only one gate left, and he tries to save the adventurer on the other side, but he starts seeing their memories. We learn that the girl he met in the red light district was after him as part of her plan. She and her fellow adventurers stole several items from the Mirage City, but as they were escaping, a young orc saw them, and when the orc and the others tried to stop them, the girl threw one of the bags, but inside it was a ring that had absorbed Makoto's mana, which caused the explosion. Tomo's clone tried to protect everyone using a water wall, but the explosion was so powerful that it broke through the barrier, killing everyone. It created a mist gate, which is how the girl teleported to S, where she's still worried about the stolen weapons. Suddenly, mist surrounds her and Makoto appears with a terrifying look. He isn't wearing his mask, so the girl starts insulting him for his looks, but he ignores this and wishes he killed her before. She mentions she's a level 96 hunter, but Makoto ignores this and takes out the traditional weapon of the orcs. She attacks Makoto, who cuts off her hands and knocks her down, telling her she deserves this. She begs him to stay away, but he finds her irritating and finishes her off. Tears start rolling down his eyes, and he wonders if it's because this is the first time he's intentionally killed someone, or because of the deaths caused by the explosion. But he concludes that it's because dying was a sad thing in the world he used to live in. The next day, Makoto holds a traditional orc funeral for the dead and pretends to be fine. He tells Tomo about his experience of seeing the girl's memories, and she feels happy knowing he killed the adventurer. As the true king of the Demiplane, he wonders if he's becoming like them because of the contracts. But this makes Tomo laugh, and Shiki explains that no part of the servant can enter the master's body. Tomo believes he could use her power because of their connection, which makes Mio angry, but Tomo clarifies she's talking about the trust between them. Shiki tells him he can use any of his servant's power, but it'll take time to get used to it. Tomo explains that the trust between master and servant is the key, so when a master faces an emergency, the servant's power may manifest in him. Mio gets jealous because Makoto used Tomo's power, and the girls start fighting over who's closer to him. Later, Makoto tells Emma about creating a wall around the Mirage City to protect the weak and the children, and he also wants the lizard men to patrol the area. He tells the Alis to take turns in pretending to be adventurers, staying in Mirage City so they can gather information. The dwarves go on to brief him on managing the warehouse, where they plan to dispose of the waste immediately and add safety precautions. After meeting the parents of the dead orc, Makoto meets his friend and apologizes, but the orc reminds him that he saved their village, so they all will happily offer their lives for him. But he still feels bad and promises to make things right. Makoto meets Patrick, who tells him about the neutral town of the Rosgard Academy. He shows Makoto a map, which surprises him because it looks a lot like Japan. Makoto plans to leave immediately, but before going, he reveals he lied and removes his mask. They are shocked to see his face, but Patrick assures him he still trusts him, mentioning how he never stopped loving his family even when they were transformed by the curse. But Makoto is a little offended by the comparison. Mio and Tomo wonder why he's only taking Shiki with him on his trip, but he explains that Shiki will be more helpful because he's a former human researcher, and he also won't destroy any talents. He mentions that he was fine with not understanding the world before, but after the recent incident, he wants to learn more about their world and his parents. He apologizes for leaving, but gifts Tomo his memories of swordsman Manip, and Mio his memories of firearms. Tomo tells him that while he's gone, she'll try to get the forest ogres to move to the Demiplane, whereas Mio will maintain Mirage City and their shop in Makoto and Shiki get ready to leave. But Makoto suddenly gets teleported somewhere else, and is attacked by two adventurers, Sophia and Lancer. He dodges their attack but gets his fingers chopped off. On the other hand, Morris tells Patrick that the main forces from Limia and Grania will soon be fighting the demons. Makoto is confused at what's going on and remembers hearing the goddess's voice before getting teleported. Sophia thinks he's a demi-human, so she wonders if he's really the goddess's hero. She continues to attack, so he uses barriers and his strengthening Kai to protect himself, but it isn't enough to fully block her attacks. His injury is also more serious than he thought, so he uses a bowstring to stop the bleeding. He learns that a war has broken out between humans and demons, and his attackers have chosen to side with the demons. Lancer tells Sophia to dispose of Makoto because he's preventing the demon army from advancing, and Makoto thinks about retreating to the Demiplane, but he knows he'll be followed, so he prepares to fight. He attacks with a rapid-fire barrage, and while his enemies are occupied with defending, he uses his concealing Kai and tries to escape, but crystal walls suddenly appear around him. Makoto uses barriers on his feet to break the walls, but Sophia and Lancer catch up to him. She thinks he isn't good at fighting but has weird abilities, and Lancer believes he's receiving the goddess's protection, so Sophia puts on a ring that removes his protection. But Makoto tells them he wasn't receiving anything from the goddess in the first place. Makoto learns that Sophia is the famous dragon hunter, and Lancer is actually a dragon. He tells them he's a merchant and doesn't want to fight, but they don't believe him and prepare to attack. Since he has no other choice, he takes off the rings, absorbing his mana, and uses his strengthening Kai, which blows them away. He switches to his investigative Kai to see them through the dust, and he uses a special arrow made by the dwarves to fire a devastating shot. Sophia and Lancer try to block it, but it splits up into multiple shots and breaks through their defense. Makoto follows up with a water arrow, and Lancer thinks he can block it since he can also use water magic, but he's surprised that Makoto's affinity for water magic is greater than him, causing him to freeze. Sophia uses this opportunity to chop off Makoto's head, but he narrowly dodges her attack. She again attacks him with all her strength, but Makoto blocks it with his arrow and it breaks her sword. He's amazed by the work of the dwarves, but Sophia suddenly grabs him, and Lancer creates crystals in the sky, which he uses to continuously swap with Sophia, taking Makoto high into the air. She returns to the ground and thinks that Makoto is done for, but he shoots fireballs to destroy the crystals, and fire starts raining from the sky, hitting both the demon and human armies. He uses the power from his mana rings to fire a huge water arrow, and everyone watches as a massive pillar descends. It freezes everyone around as it lands, while Makoto disappears into thin air. As the rings shatter, there's a massive water explosion, and it creates a whole new lake, but we see Sophia and Lancer manage to survive. They think Makoto must have died in the attack, but Sophia swears to kill him if he's still alive. When Makoto wakes up, he notices Tomo and Mia sleeping next to him, and surprisingly, all his injuries are healed. He tells everyone about Sophia and Lancer, and Shiki mentions that the goddess manipulated him to fight the demon army. Mia gets angry, but Makoto believes it's his fault because he got careless, and thinks he must increase the amount of mana he can use at once, so he decides to study at the academy with Shiki. Tomo thinks Shiki and Mio should travel with them because the goddess can interfere at any time, but he mentions he wants to hide them from her, calling them his trump card. Tomo introduces Makoto to her new clone, which she made using one of his rings, and he names her Coco. Tomo mentions how Coco won't end up like the previous clone, and this is basically their child, so Mio gets mad hearing this. We see that the forest ogres have also moved into the demoplane, and Tomo plans to prepare them for the dimensional ranking. Their shop inside is opened, and a customer visits to get his blade repaired. He's unhappy with the Demium employees, but Bayon takes his blade and repairs it. Mio shows off how sharp it is, and it accidentally cuts the customer's cheek, but Eyes quickly heals him. Everyone is impressed with their services, and even Patrick is amazed to see Makoto's shop. Makoto learns that during his fight with Sophia and Lancer, he unintentionally hurt both the human and demon armies. He realizes there were other heroes on the battlefield, so he wonders if he will meet them in the future. Later on, as Makoto thinks about his past life, Emma calls him for the feast, which is to celebrate their new shop and for his farewell. He reflects on everything that happened to him and thinks that living in this world isn't that bad, but he immediately takes back his words when he sees Tomo and Mio fighting once again. On their way to Rothgard, Makoto and Shiki reach the town of Obit. Makoto mentions that walking is tiring, but Shiki believes it's better than teleporting and getting found by the goddess. He asks Makoto to find something to eat while he searches for a nice place to stay. Makoto says he's fine staying anywhere, but Shiki can't allow them to stay at a cheap place because he knows it will upset Mio and Tomo, and Makoto wonders if leaving the demoplane in their hands was the right decision. Back at the demoplane, Mio practices cooking so she can impress Makoto, but her friends pass out after eating the food she prepared. Tomo is glad she didn't serve it directly to Makoto, but Mio isn't sure what went wrong because she made the curry just like in Makoto's memories. Tomo wonders if Mio has ever eaten rice curry, and she tells her that she hasn't because it's a dish from another world. She didn't even ask Makoto how to make it because she wanted to surprise him. Emma and Bayon wonder if the green part is a mineral ore, and she says it looked delicious in Makoto's memory, but they tell her that the original ingredient was probably a bell pepper. Mio eats the curry and finds no issue with it, but Tomo tells her most people aren't able to eat minerals like her, and this surprises her. Tomo isn't sure if she studied cooking, but Mio mentions knowing how to use a flame. Tomo asks her to prepare toast to test her, and Mio thinks it's easy, but she uses her flames and burns it completely. On the other hand, Makoto tries blue meat for the first time and is surprised by its texture. The restaurant owner wants him to at least pretend to enjoy the food, but Makoto tells him he liked its taste. He wonders if it's made from slime, which impresses the owner, and he thinks Makoto must be a good adventurer because he easily identified the ingredient. He mentions he submitted a request to the guild for slime hunting and asks Makoto for help, but he tells him that he's mainly a merchant and is traveling to Rothgard. This draws everyone's attention, and Makoto realizes he's being watched, so he leaves after paying his bill with a gold coin. Makoto walks around the city, and everyone makes fun of his ugly looks, which makes him question his decision to take off his mask, but he notes this is still tolerable compared to his first visit to the human town. Makoto goes to the guild, where the receptionist can't believe he completed a special mission while being just an E-rank adventurer. He notices the slime hunting quest, but he can't accept it because there's a B-rank requirement. He hears a girl telling the receptionist that the moon over the ruined castle is attacking, which surprises him because it's a song he loved in his previous life. She asks why they aren't helping her, but the receptionist tells her that they're understaffed and can't handle a bandit group with over 100 members. The girl gets emotional and wonders why this is happening to them, even though they offer their prayers to the goddess. A few of the adventurers make fun of her, saying that if prayers worked, there wouldn't be a need for adventurers, but the girl believes the goddess is angry because of people like them. The adventurers start harassing the girl, and she rushes out in tears. Makoto walks in the street and realizes he's being followed. He uses his kai and learns that the adventurers are attacking the girl and her partner, so he decides to help them. He defeats the men following him and sends them flying towards the harassers. One of them takes out his knife to attack Makoto, but he doesn't give him a chance and defeats them easily. He heals her partner using his healing kai, and she wonders if he's helping them because he's a demium, but he tells her that despite his ugly appearance, he's a human. He introduces himself, and the girl tells him she's Lana from the top of village, and her partner is Ido, a werewolf, which surprises Makoto because he thought werewolves were large and scary. Makoto wonders why she can't wait for the guild to deal with the bandits, and Lana reveals that the bandits tortured their village's strongest fighter, Barkley, and killed his wife. The villagers want to accept the bandits' request and share their resources, but every village they've robbed so far has been slaughtered. Ito regains consciousness and asks Lana if the guild will help them, but she tells him no, and he apologizes for not being strong enough to deal with the bandits. Makoto says he'll escort them to their village, but they mention that it'll take a long time to reach it because it's very far. He tells them it's fine and asks them not to bite their tongue, as he grabs them and starts jumping from one tree to the next. They reach the village, and Lana tells him to wait while she explains the situation to everyone. After she leaves, Makoto asks Ito if he isn't part of the village, and he's surprised that Makoto can speak their language. Ito reveals that Lana and a few villagers are kind to him, but the others will never allow a demium like him to enter their village. Makoto uses his investigative kai and learns that the bandits have hurt several villagers, which impresses Ito, who thinks that Makoto also has a great sense of smell like him. He tells Ito that he knew he was pretending to be unconscious when he was carrying him, thinking he couldn't face Lana after putting her in danger, but he advises him to protect her if he wishes to be with her. Makoto's investigative kai detects something else, and he starts going towards the mountain, but Ito tries to stop him, and he realizes that Ito also knows what's present there. Ito isn't sure why he's doing this, so he mentions not liking the bandits using his favorite song's name. Ito wonders how he can ever repay him, so he tells him that he owns a trading company where several demi-humans work, so if they ever come to their village, they should treat them well. In the demiplane, more people have fallen victim to Mio's cooking, who still isn't sure what she's doing wrong. Tomo tells her that just using good ingredients won't make the food taste good because different species have different tastes, and this surprises Mio, who never thought cooking would be this difficult. Tomo thinks Mio should test her cooking on Lime because he's a human just like Makoto, but this will be painful for Lime, so she suggests Mio to travel the world to improve her cooking. Mio agrees to this idea, which makes everyone happy since they won't have to eat her cooking anymore. On the other hand, Makoto finds the bandits and decides to wear his mask because he doesn't want them to figure out his identity. He uses silencing kai, which removes all the sound in their surroundings and causes a panic among the bandits. He uses this opportunity to attack them with arrows, and when they try to counterattack, his armor protects him. He doesn't want to waste his arrows, so he uses a fire arrow to knock out everyone in a single attack. Only one bandit remains, who begs Makoto to spare his life, but he says he isn't going to kill him and asks him to change their group's name. Makoto meets Shiki, who's found a room that costs 3 gold coins, which Makoto finds expensive, but Shiki reveals that the heroes are treated well by the Limia Kingdom and Grania Empire, so he can't allow Makoto to be the only one who's living in poverty. Makoto remembers the heroes from his fight with the demons and wonders when he'll meet them. We see Makoto in his previous life, where he meets a girl named Hiyaragi, who wonders how he's in the archery club when he's so ugly, but she's a little jealous of him because, unlike him, she has a boring life and she always gets what she wants. Suddenly, a white light appears, and she's teleported to another world where the goddess asks her to become a hero. She assures Hiyaragi that she won't be alone against demons, since she'll also send another hero to help her, and she'll get all kinds of powers. The goddess wonders if Hiyaragi wants a challenging life, which tempts Hiyaragi, so the goddess gives her magical abilities, increased strength and charisma. She also gives her a silver sash and sends her to the Limia Kingdom, where everyone is waiting for her since the goddess had told them about a hero coming to help them fight the demons. Days pass, and Hiyaragi learns that the demons were forced into the barren lands, but for the past decade, they've been advancing, and the Alicia Kingdom has already been defeated, whereas the Limia and Grania kingdoms are still fighting. She knows that Grania also has a hero, and the two nations are only working together due to a common enemy. But once the war is over, it could become a problem. She calls the wolf spirit hiding in her sash and thinks about her teammates she'll be recruiting. The next day, as we learn that the king has already selected the court mage Woody and a knight named Verda. The next day, we meet Navel, who's also known as the silver-haired ogre, as she looks at Hiyaragi, finding her unsuitable for battle, so she decides to leave, but she's stopped by Woody. Hiyaragi interrupts them and asks Navel to be her teacher, but Navel isn't interested. Hiyaragi convinces her by saying if she joins their party, she can be on the front line and can kill all the demons, so Navel ends up accepting. Hiyaraga's group is asked to escort the priestess of Laurel named Chia, but on her way, she's attacked by mana-eating monsters called kobolds. The priestess creates a barrier around her, and the group goes to fight the kobolds, but Hiyaragi has never killed before and she feels nervous. They attack, but Hiyaragi hesitates to kill the monster because he begs her to spare him, and he uses this opportunity to call his friends. She blames herself for the trouble, but upon seeing her friends struggling, she gathers the courage and starts fighting. The group follows her lead and defeats all the kobolds, so Chia wishes to join their party, but they think it'll cause problems with Laurel. Chia cuts off her hair and asks them to allow her to join them, otherwise her nation will think they did something to her. Hiyaragi finds her threat senseless, and she just ruined her hair, but Chia thinks it would have disturbed her while fighting. Navel and Hiyaragi joke about how they should also cut their hair. However, Chia mentions that they're strong and don't need this, but Hiyaragi finds Chia impressive and wishes to learn magic from her. The newly formed group starts defeating the demons, but when they face Mio in her spider form, they struggle against her. Mio's skin is too strong, and not their attack works on her, but Navel keeps attacking and manages to cut off one of her legs, but it regenerates instantly. Navel is about to be eaten, but Hiyaragi saves her and tells Chia to heal her. They're all defeated by Mio, and only Hiyaragi remains, who manages to damage one of Mio's eyes but passes out. She wakes up in her room and is happy that no one died during their battle, but this is her first defeat, so she thanks Mio for the experience and vows to defeat her the next time they meet. In Makoto's old world, we see a boy named Oki who has a miserable life and wishes to live in another world with superpowers. He goes to sleep, and when he wakes up, he finds the goddess standing before him. She asks for his help and grants him magic and a strong body, as well as an eye that can charm others, along with flying shoes and the ability to become immortal. At night, he isn't happy with his appearance, so she changes it and sends him to Grania, where the second princess of the Grania Empire, Lily, Flaunce greets him. Lily introduces him to Genya, a royal guard, and he's surprised since he's never seen a female knight. She considers him rude but starts blushing when he stares into her eyes. Lily thinks something is wrong and takes Tomoki to measure his level. She learns that Oki has a magic eye, and she tells the doctor to make sure that the royal family is immune to its effects. Later on, Oki is introduced to Yukinatsu, an alchemist, who tells him that she doesn't make medicines but is skilled in making golems. Oki gets excited by this, which charms her, and she invites him to her room, but Lily stops her. Tomoki walks around the castle and he finds a dragon summoner named Mora. He gets excited by her dragon and wonders if she lives with her family here, but she says that Lily brought her to the castle after their village was attacked by demons. He apologizes to her, and she says it's fine, but she's also charmed by his eye and asks him to marry her. At night, Oki tells Lily he wants to form a party with the three girls, and Lily says they already like him, so it won't be a problem. She thinks he still can't control his magic eye, while Tomoki wonders if everyone likes him just because of his powers. He wants to know what Lily thought of him when they first met, and she thinks he's a great hero, so it's natural that everyone likes him. She kisses him, and they spend the night together, as we learn Lily is willing to do anything to defeat the demons. Lily tells Oki that Grania and Limia are preparing to launch a joint attack on Fort Stella, and he shows interest in meeting the Limia Kingdom's hero. Lily mentions their hero is gorgeous, but he assures her he's happy with her. On the other hand, Navel tells Hiyaragi about their plans to fight the demons, but Hiyaragi doesn't look happy, so Navel wonders if she's thinking about Grania's hero, and Hiyaragi tells her that she's interested in him since they are from the same place and are almost the same age. The two nations meet, and Lily reveals they got reinforcements from the King of Iron but received less support from Laurel, and Hiyaragi thinks their relationship with Laurel isn't good because of Chia. Lily says that even after this setback, they outnumber the demons, and once they receive the goddess's blessing, their advantage will further increase. Hiyaragi asks why they're fighting at night, and Oki tells her they're used to it, but she mentions that Limia isn't good at fighting in the dark. Oki wonders if Limia has anything useful to offer, but he mentions that this fight is like a mid-boss battle, which they should easily win with the goddess's blessing. She wonders if they met in their previous life, and he says no. But when she mentions that Amal, her friend, liked to have the same name as him, he gets angry and tells her that they're two different people. She apologizes for upsetting him, and he asks what level she's at, so she reveals she's level 430, but Oki says he's over 600, which makes her realize that he's trying to one-up her. At night, Navel wonders why Hiyaragi came to this world, and she explains how she was born into a good family and wanted to experience challenges in her life. Navel can't believe Hiyaragi is going to war because she couldn't even kill a kobold at first. But Hiyaragi says that this time she has a friend to watch her back. Oki asks for the goddess's blessing as they prepare for battle, whereas a demon commander, Rona, is told they're about to be attacked. The war begins, and Hiyaragi feels something isn't right because they easily defeat their enemies. So she tells Chia and Woody to put a barrier around them in case they fall into a trap. They reach the fort's gate, where Rona activates a magic circle, making everyone fall into a hole. But Oki uses his flying shoes to escape, and when Rona attacks him using ice magic, he uses the divine spear to block her attack, and his party also escapes thanks to the replica shoes made by Yukinatsu. He asks Mora to summon her dragon, Nagi, which they ride to enter the fort. A demon commander appears to fight them, and Oki attacks without hesitation, blowing up the demon's arm, but the demon considers him rude for starting the fight without introducing himself. Tomoe realizes that the demon won't be defeated in a single attack, and Hiyaragi arrives to help him. She apologizes to the demon for Tomoki's behavior and introduces herself, and the demon tells them that he's AI, the demi-giant. He regenerates his arm, which shocks Hiyaragi, as his regeneration is on par with the black spider. AI removes the goddess's blessing from Oki and Hiyaragi, making them fall to their knees, which makes Oki realize that he's no longer immortal. At night, he tells everyone to retreat and reminds Hiyaragi that they're heroes who can't die here, but she decides to stay and tells him that she won't call someone who only cares for themselves a hero. AI is disappointed that he'll only be fighting Hiyaragi, but she tells him that she isn't alone as her party arrives to fight by her side. The goddess is disappointed that the humans weren't successful even after she sent 2 heroes to help them, but she suddenly notices Makoto. Hiyaragi and the others keep fighting AI and manage to hold until morning, but reality hits Hiyaragi that she isn't strong enough to defeat him. Rona asks Sophia how things are going, and she tells her that everything is fine. But at that moment, they see the goddess's light, and we see how Makoto was summoned. This gives the humans hope, and they continue to fight, but they're still on their last legs. So Navel asks Woody to use the magic device which will allow her to hold back on AI while everyone else escapes. He hesitates at first, but decides to use a talisman on her sword and gives her the rose sign. Navel attacks AI and manages to cut him, which surprises Hiyaragi, so Navel tells her she's using a special catalyst, but Verta notices the rose sign on her neck and realizes what's happening. Navel cuts off one of Ai's hands, who's surprised that the people of this world know spells that he's never seen before. Navel is also surprised that they haven't managed to defeat either, even one demon commander, but AI assures her he's the strongest demon on this battlefield. Navel slashes Ai's neck, which impresses him, since he didn't think he would have to use his full strength. He activates his second phase, and Navel calls out Woody, who transports everyone else away. Hiyaragi tells him to stop, but Verta holds her back and reveals that the rose sign gives its users great power in exchange for their lives. AI says he's going after Hiyaragi since Navel can't fight anymore, but she's still not ready to give up and says she won't die a worthless death, and she'll also continue living in her friend's memories. He punches her, but she stabs his hand and uses the death reward spell that burns them both to dust. On the other hand, Oki wonders if he should have fought with Hiyaragi, but Lily says he made the right choice because he symbolizes hope for the people of Grania. We see that AI is still alive, and Rona tells him about Sophia's defeat, thinking that whoever the goddess summoned to face her must have been a monster. Back in the present, Mio plans on going to the port town of Kurin to find seaweed and kelp, which are commonly used in the Japanese dishes that Makoto likes. Whereas Tomo learns that a lake appeared where Makoto fought Sophia, so she wants to investigate it. Mia says they'll be along for a while, but Tomo tells her that Makoto and Shiki have reached Rothgard, and once things calm down, they'll return to the demiplane. Shiki sees all the shops in Rothgard and thinks business must be competitive here, and Makoto tells him to start gathering information. They come across a girl surrounded by men. The girl tries to leave, but a man pushes her and Makoto tells him to stop. But since he can't speak their language, they ignore his writing, so he tells Shiki to talk with them. Shiki tries to talk some sense into them, but when they don't behave, Makoto thinks that if Mio and Tomo were here, they would have wanted to kill them, But since he's with Shiki, he thinks he won't have that problem, but Shiki gets mad at their attitude. The men tell them to stay away, as they need to talk with the girl, but Shiki says he will allow them to live if they leave, which makes Makoto realize he's picking a fight on purpose. The men use wind magic and start floating, but Makoto wonders why they're not attacking. Shiki uses earth magic and sends them up into the sky, but Makoto removes his spell, and he thinks Makoto will soon become a master at counterspelling. Makoto asks the girl to run away, but she says she didn't ask for his help, so Makoto tells her that he doesn't expect anything in exchange for his help. She realizes he's not like the other men and tells him that she's a waitress at the Goda restaurant, and she'll properly thank them if they visit the place. Shiki finds the girl rude, but Makoto understands why she would be suspicious of a stranger saving her. They notice the men still floating, so Makoto tells Shiki to help them, but Shiki drops them to the ground and thinks they shouldn't have gotten involved, and Makoto says he got curious after seeing the girl's eyes. Makoto tells Shiki that the academy's entrance exam is in 3 days, and Shiki is surprised that he plans on taking it, but he explains that he needs to enter the academy to get permission for opening the store. Shiki mentions that Makoto isn't taking the new student test, but the teacher employment test, which shocks him since he doesn't know what that is. Shiki explains that it's a test to become a teacher, and tells him that it's written on the documents given by Rembrandt, but we learn that this was mistakenly done by Morris due to his weak eyesight. On the exam day, Makoto wonders if they have any other position he could fill, but his request is denied. The worker makes fun of Makoto's appearance, which makes Shiki angry, and he attacks him, but Makoto holds him back and apologizes to the man. A woman arrives and apologizes on behalf of the other employee, and asks Makoto if he wants to take the practical or written test. She notices that he has a recommendation letter from the Rembrandt Company and thinks he must be quite accomplished. Makoto isn't sure what test he should take, but Shiki tells the woman he'll take the practical test, since only a few people manage to pass it. The examinees are told that the exam will last 3 days, and they're asked to go to the testing area. They're given a feather-shaped item that they should use if they want to return, and a bell-shaped item if they want to drop out. Examinees aren't allowed to fight, but they'll be far from each other, so it's unlikely they'll cross paths, and to pass the exam, they must bring back 3 of the orbs flying across the site. Makoto is transported to the testing area, and he uses his investigative kai to see that there's plenty of food and water. He finds this place a paradise compared to the wasteland he was first dropped in. He sees a red orb, and reading the instructions, he realizes that only specific attacks work on each orb, and if they're attacked in any other way, they'll break. Physical attacks work on the red orbs, so he punches it, but to his surprise, it bursts into pieces. He finds a yellow orb which can only be attacked with magic, so he uses his breath to attack, but it also shatters. He comes across a blue orb which can be captured using ranged attacks, so he uses his bow and arrow, but the result is the same. He isn't sure what he's doing wrong and wonders if his attacks have too much power. He remembers he's constantly using his strengthening spell, so he removes it and tries to catch a red orb but fails again. The next day, he learns using his investigative kai that one of the other examinees is gone, so he decides to hurry up even if it isn't a race. He tries to catch a blue orb by grazing it with the feather end of his arrow, but it suddenly teleports elsewhere. He uses the same technique and finally captures it, but he senses that another examinee has also disappeared, and he wonders if they are passing the test or dropping out. He prepares to catch a yellow orb, so he weakens himself with weakening kai and reduces the breath flame to attack and captures it successfully. Later that night, he senses a new person entering the test, but he's not worried as long as they don't bother him. The next morning, as he wakes up, he's attacked by a man dressed in black who throws his knives at him, but he blocks them. The man disappears, but Makoto knows he's behind him and tries to get away, but he gets caught. The man tries to stab him, but Makoto grabs his blade and breaks it in half, which cuts his hand, and he realizes that it had poison on it. Makoto asks the man if he's attacking the examinees, and he reveals that he made everyone else leave the test, and only Makoto remains. He mentions that he wasn't excited about being hired to threaten him, but will make him pay for breaking his blade. He reveals that his blade was covered in a fast-acting poison, but he's shocked to learn that the poison has been neutralized. Makoto offers to reveal how he neutralized the poison if he tells him who hired him, but the man says he has no contact with his employer. The man realizes he can't move, and Makoto reveals he has temporarily paralyzed him from the neck down. He tells him that his poison didn't work on him because he's immune to it, and he kicks him into the sky. Makoto still can't capture the red orb since his body continuously releases mana, but he gets an idea to use the back of his knife to attack the orb and finally manages to capture it. He uses the feather to return to the academy, and the examiner wonders if he also dropped out like the other contestants, but is surprised when he sees that Makoto collected all the orbs. The examiner gets shocked that he caught 3 orbs of different colors when he only asked for 3 of the same color. Makoto tells Shiki that he has been appointed as a temporary instructor, and he wants to go to the Goda restaurant since the next exam won't be for a while. On the other hand, the examiner drinks with a girl at the bar and reveals that no one was supposed to pass the exam because someone made a request to increase the difficulty. But Makoto still managed to pass, which the girl finds interesting. Makoto gets called to the academy, but he decides to have lunch first and thinks they've been eating at Douchuu for 5 straight days. The girl they rescued, named Lyria, takes their order, and she finds it odd that instead of sharing a hot pot like the others, they're ordering separately. We see one of the bullies named Illumin secretly watching them when he's approached by a girl from the academy who gives him a magic medicine that'll increase his physical and magical abilities. At the academy, Makoto is informed about the rules for teachers, and although he can promote his business, he's not allowed to exchange money on the academy grounds. He learns that the teachers are paid 10 silver coins per student, and part-time teachers can lecture a maximum of 30 students. Makoto agrees to start teaching soon, but he plans to teach only a few students, which surprises the academy employee since most teachers try to gather more students. One of the full-time teachers named Bright talks to Makoto about his plan for teaching practical skills, and he tells Makoto that his focus is on theory, but he also teaches combat techniques. He offers to send his students to Makoto's class if they're interested, and mentions that this year there are many extraordinary students, with a few being able to cast floating spells and communicate telepathically, which makes Makoto wonder if he's talking about the boys he fought before. Later on, Makoto goes to the library to find material for his lecture, and the librarian asks if she can help him find the books. He wonders if they have books on magic incantation, but as she calls him by his name, he instantly creates a barrier and jumps back. She praises his quick reflexes, but Makoto wonders who she is and how she knows his name. She tells him that she knows every teacher's name, but Makoto doesn't believe her since the academy has hundreds of teachers. She mentions she heard about him from her sister Lyria, and she introduces herself as Eva, but Makoto finds her suspicious. On the other hand, Mio learns how to cook from a girl named Beretta, and she's enjoying her time, but the girl is scared by her knife handling. At the Rothgard Academy, the students talk about how they're unsure if Makoto is a worthy teacher, but Makoto hears them and realizes that the students aren't taking him seriously, so he tells Shiki that he'll be a strict teacher. Students arrive for their class, and the female students find Shiki handsome, but their views of Makoto are completely opposite. Makoto tells them to pay attention since his class on magic is going to be difficult, but one of the students says that his specialty is with the sword. Makoto learns that no one can use more than one element, so he decides to use Tomo's strategy and calls out everyone for the lack of skills, saying that with the way things are, they'll all end up being third-rate magicians. The students distrust his abilities, so he arranges a practice fight with Shiki to show them what he can do. The students are impressed by Shiki's staff since it contains mana of different elements, but they can't sense any mana from Makoto. The fight begins, and Shiki lunges with a flaming attack, but it does nothing against Makoto's barrier. Shiki continues his attack, and Makoto notes how he has gotten faster, so Shiki thanks his training with Tomo and Mio. Makoto counters with a fire blast, pushing Shiki back, but Makoto is impressed he survived. Shiki uses his earth magic, but Makoto fires a fire arrow that instantly destroys it. The students can't believe what they're watching, and Makoto launches a boulder at Shiki, but he stops it with a counterspell, so Makoto tries shooting a fire and water arrow simultaneously, but Shiki still manages to stop it, crediting the dwarves who made his staff. They decide to end things, so they both start chanting their incantations. The students are surprised to see Makoto can speak and wonder how much stronger the chanted spells will be. The two clash, causing a massive explosion which even injures one of the students, and as the dust settles, we see that Shiki has been defeated. Makoto ends his class, telling them it's their choice if they want to join, but says if they want to become stronger, then they should join his class. Before Makoto leaves, he asks Shiki to heal the girl who got hurt during their battle. He immediately heals her, but her face turns red when he touches her, as she has developed a crush on him. She thinks he must have used an expensive medicine, but Shiki tells her that it's common in their shop. The students have mixed reactions to the battle, with a few being terrified while the others are impressed by their new instructor. On the other hand, Tomo goes to the lake that was created after Makoto's battle and questions a man who was present at the time. The man thinks that Makoto was here to punish them, which is why he fired an arrow of punishment to destroy everything. Tomo reads his memories, and after seeing what happened, she thinks about how there's never a dull moment with her master.